Here with me today are Sierra Long and Salil Pai. Sierra is a senior at James Benson Dudley High School. She is currently a member of the Student Government Association, serving as the senior class president, and has been president of her class each year. She is also a member of the National Technical Honor Society, where she serves as parliamentarian. Sierra is a member of Dudley's Ladies, which is a group of young women who are committed to serving the surrounding community. Salil is a 10th grader at the early college at Guilford College. He's a member of the robotics team, Science Olympiad, and international clubs. He's working towards his Eagle Award with his Boy Scout troop and is a 2018-19 member of the Youth Leadership Greensboro. Thank you both for being here today, and I look forward to the questions that you have for me. Welcome.
Dr. Contreras, when you were younger, what or who inspired you to become an educator and ultimately the superintendent of one of the largest districts in the country?
When I was younger, I didn't know I would be the superintendent of one of the largest districts in the country, but I always taught. So on Saturday mornings, I would wake up. And back then, we had these tiny blackboards you could buy from Toys R Us, and I would play teacher with my brothers and sisters. And back then, actually, they were the teachers, and I was the student. But as I got a little bit older, on Saturday mornings, I would be out in the neighborhood. I would wake everybody up, all the kids in the neighborhood up, and make them play school with me. And I was always the teacher. So I knew my destiny was in teaching. But when I really was inspired was when I was in junior high. They were junior highs before they were middle school. And I had an incredible teacher, Mrs. Doris Hargrove, who inspired me to love literature and poetry, and I wanted to be like her. She was the first and only teacher of color I had for a core subject area in all of my K-12 experience, and I wanted to be just like her. And I went on to become a high school English teacher, and so did my sister Kimberly because of Mrs. Hargrove. And my sister Kimberly taught right here in the Guilford County Schools.
Dr. Contreras, I've been hearing a lot lately about a facility studies that was paid for by GCS and the county commissioners. Can you tell us a little bit about that study, the highlights, and what the next steps are going to be?
Absolutely. So I worked diligently to make sure that attention was brought to the conditions of our schools. And many of our parents, students, teachers, school board members had been talking about this for a long time, that the facilities are not conducive to great learning for our students, for our children, and they don't represent the values of this community. I worked with our county commissioners, and they said, let's commission a joint study and independently determine what the needs of the schools are. We don't want this to be biased anyway. We don't want this to be based on who has the most voice or social and political capital in the community. We want this to be based upon the facts. What are the conditions of the schools? And so we commissioned this study, and they looked at the condition of the facilities, the educational suitability, meaning the programming in the buildings. Could this school building provide adequate programming for students? They looked at technology readiness. Did it have technology infrastructure, not the hardware, but the actual infrastructure? They also looked at the site. They did comprehensive site reviews. And they came back and rank ordered the schools. And we found that most of the schools were sorely in need of renovation, are in need of renovation in order to be 21st century facilities that will provide our students with great learning spaces in order to provide them with experiences that will allow them to be career ready, to go into the workforce, or to go on to college and be competitive. But right now, that's not the case. The next steps are to review this study. The Board of Education will review this at a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners and determine what the next steps are. How do we want to go about addressing these schools? In what order? What's the capacity of this community? And will we ask the community to vote for a bond referendum to actually repair these schools? And if so, for how much? 300 million, 750 million? Certainly we know it's not going to be 1.5 billion, but we're hopeful that the federal bill will pass, which is $100 billion, a school infrastructure bill to support the dilapidated schools in this nation, the infrastructure of the schools in this nation. If that passes, along with the state bill, which is about $2 billion, then the local community will have to do far less, and we can get most of the buildings done at one time.
You were on the news recently about testifying before Congress. Can you tell us why you testified, and how did it feel being the only superintendent chosen to do so?
I was terrified. That's the truth. I was certainly honored to do so. I think that when I was asked to do it, it was more a matter of what's happening in this country with the nation's buildings, and the sort of learning experiences or conditions that our teachers and students are subjected to. It's just not okay. It doesn't sit well for me. So if this is my opportunity to say something on behalf of the 1/6 of the nation, it's an amazing statistic. 1/6 of the nation's population are in schools every single day. If I can say something that will make their work lives and their experiences as learners better, I'm going to go to Congress and do this. And I tell you, I was nervous, but then someone behind me said, "You know more about education and schools than every single person in this room." And that's true, because that's my profession. And for everyone else in the room, that's just not true, except there is one congresswoman who is a teacher, and she's from Connecticut, and she knew quite a bit about education. But certainly as a superintendent, I have quite a bit of experience in facilities. And so I was able to speak truth to power about what you all are experiencing every day, and that there was a vote in that specific committee, and hopefully there'll be a vote of the entire House next, and then it will go to the Senate. So I'm hopeful that that bill will pass.
So what's the biggest issue GCS is facing in terms of offering all students the best educational opportunities, and what is your plan in order to address this issue?
I think there are many issues. Facilities is certainly one, but I think that the funding in general is problematic. So in the state of North Carolina, we spend far less than the rest of the country on public education. And if we were just at the national average, that would bring in about $175 million more per year for educational programs, for raises for teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, teaching assistants. Those are your parents. For many of our students, those are the parents. Their parents work in the district. It improves the quality of your life as well as the quality of the educational programming. It allows us to maintain our arts programs, band, chorus, orchestra, AP arts, our sports programs. It allows us to support students who are struggling. It allows us to support our gifted programs. It allows us to support social emotional learning. Many of our students are struggling, to put gang prevention programs in school. We can do better by students by just bringing North Carolina up to the national average.
We hear a lot about closing the achievement gaps for students in school. Can you explain what that means, and also why is it so important?
That's a great question. And I think in this country, it is unacceptable that between different groups of students, boys and girls, blacks and whites, Hispanics and whites, there is such a disparity in the performance that cannot be explained by one's natural God-given ability. We're all given an ability, but I think we can reach that ability if there's fairness. And so we are trying to work towards more equity, making sure that there is equity in access to programming into schools so that that gap closes. We're also looking at how do we make sure there's fairness and equity in how we spend money, not just here in the district, but how do other units of government spend money so that everybody experiences economic prosperity and that achievement gap closes, because the achievement gap is tied to income, how much one makes. And most of the schools that score DIF in this state, on the state accountability system, in fact, 98% have more than 50% poverty. That's a problem. And we can close the achievement gap if we eradicate poverty and racism.
So, before we finish up, what advice would you give to a high school student that wants to be a school teacher or even a principal someday?
Well, I would say there is no greater profession, and all other professions come from teaching. So we are working to actually start offering career pathways at the high school level for those who aspire to go into education. We want to offer urban education programs, and we want more students to go into education to teach others. I know that for many, they see this as a field that doesn't pay a lot, and that's true. But I think that's going to change because teachers are starting to fight back. Parents are starting to fight back and say, we value education in this country. We value teachers. We value educators. So I think the working conditions for educators are going to improve, and we need the best and brightest to start going into education. So I encourage young people who have a passion for teaching, a passion for the subject area, and most of all, a passion for changing the world, changing lives, to go into the profession.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Contreras, for your time today. We have truly enjoyed learning more about you and the initiatives of the district.
And I always enjoy being with you. I want you to know I believe in you. I love you. I'm never going to give up on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.